I'm sure no one watching this video is going to be surprised when I say that Destiny in 2024 was not only the peak of the game, but also the biggest hole the game has ever found itself in. This past year had a lot going for it. Into the Light, the final shape, a number of reworks and fixes, and promises of game improvements. But it also is plagued by buggy releases, content droughts, boring activities, a lack of meaningful loot grinds, and more. Destiny going into 2025 is at a pivotal point in its history, and Bungie will really need to do some work to help Destiny survive past its next 2 expansions this year. With all this in mind, I think it's time I give my 2 cents about what is going on with Destiny and what we could hope to see in the future. And I want to do it in my own way. Everyone already knows about what's going on in the game, whether it's because of other content creators talking about it, or because of your own experience playing the game. Instead of saying the same thing as everyone else, it's time to take a deep dive into a number of key parts of the game right now. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Welcome to the current state of Destiny 2. If you're new here or haven't already, maybe give that little red subscribe button under the video a tap. You're not going to want to miss any of my upcoming state of videos. This is the first video in the series and will serve as an overview of some of the topics I'll be covering in future videos. By the way, I want to talk about the topics you guys want to hear the most about. At the end of the video, I'll let you know how you could vote for which topic I should cover in each video, so make sure to stay tuned until the very end. But without further ado, let's talk about where we currently find ourselves in Destiny 2. There are a lot of different aspects of Destiny that make it what it is, whether that's its loot system, activities, build crafting, or otherwise. I've got a running list of many things that I could talk about, both good and bad. Since this video is just an overview, I'm not going to go in depth into every topic here. For that, you'll have to watch the in-depth video for any particular topic. But I thought it would be a good idea to get everyone on the same page about where Destiny 2 currently stands as of the end of 2024, going into the beginning of 2025. So let's start off this overview with talking about how we got to where we are right now. To no one's surprise, episode Revenant, where we currently find ourselves, is maybe the lowest point in the history of Destiny. But to talk about the problems, we first should go over what made Destiny great in 2024. We had 2 major content releases during the year that breathed new life into the game, those being Into the Light in May and the final shape in June. Into the Light was a fantastic time for the game. Coming off of the longest season we've ever had, Season of the Wish, players were starting to become burnt out playing the same content over and over. Into the Light was designed as a way to bring new and reprised content to the game in an effort to bring those burnt out players back into the game prior to the final shape's launch. Into the Light brought a couple key things to the game to freshen it up. At the top was a brand new activity, Onslaught. Onslaught was a heavily requested mode by players designed to give a wave-based PvE experience that the game had not received prior. The mode in a vacuum was pretty good. There were 2 difficulties, both of which tasked players with completing 50 waves of enemies, including challenging bosses, to receive loot. Both casual and hardcore players enjoyed the mode. You could take it at your own pace, and the goal of getting through all 50 waves was a great incentive for players to keep attempting it. Loot from Onslaught was also very sought after, both because of the overall power of the weapons in the Brave Arsenal, but also because of the chase weapons, the shiny, limited time ornament variants, which dropped with multiple perks in each column. But that's not all that Into the Light brought us, and we also got the reprisal of the Whisper and 0 Hour missions, and the much loved Pantheon activity. Following Into the Light, we were immediately thrust into the final shape, the final expansion in the Light and Darkness saga, the culmination of 10 years of storytelling. This expansion was huge, and not just in terms of story, but also just the amount of content that it was launched with. Of course, we had a great campaign, but also an interesting new patrol location with a replayable PvE activity built right into it. We also got one of, if not the best raids in the game, Salvation's Edge. We got the first official 12-man activity in Excision, a co-op challenge variant of a handful of campaign missions, many new exotic weapons and armor, and, not to forget, the addition of the Prismatic subclass. Much of this content is still pretty replayable, and is a testament to the time and effort taken to ensure that it was an expansion worthy of the end of an era. But that's kind of where the good ends for the year. After the final shape, we were given a set of content drops, the episodes, which were meant to tie up loose storylines and give us regular content drops to finish out the year with. Episodes in and of themselves could make an entire video. With episodes, the cracks in Destiny had begun to show. Players, although happy with the final shape, were not happy with episodes, and because of that, problems started to surface. A number of key issues really started to come forward. Buggy content, bad loot, activity replayability issues, storytelling problems, lack of build crafting, and of course, burnout. Despite each episode having an array of new weapons and armor to chase, many of these were either too easy to obtain, removing a reason to grind content for certain loot, or the loot just wasn't good enough to warrant the grind. Echoes vs Revenant really brought the idea of crafting versus random rolls back into the conversation, with most Echo's weapons being craftable and none of the Revenant weapons being craftable at all. What convoluted this further was when Weightgate was exposed. Turns out, for a long time, random weapon rolls were skewed based on the location of each perk in their perk pool per weapon. This major bug most likely is a key reason why players may be pushed further towards weapon crafting, since it completely mitigates future bugs like this. But crafting also comes with its own set of problems. The most prominent being the removal of a reason to grind content, effectively meaning you won't have a reason to play the game once you craft your perfect weapon. But that leads us into activities, and how they need to be designed in a way that incentivizes a grind. After all, players were happy to grind loot in Onslaught, and none of those weapons were craftable. Onslaught struck a perfect balance between grind and replayability. It was a little different every time it was played, and had a number of goals associated with the activity, such as the Legend 50 wave emblem, and it absolutely showered players with loot throughout the activity. Many activities in Destiny failed to follow the example set by Onslaught. Strikes, although a solid PvE activity in theory, fails on replayability due to being linear, unchanging, and only really providing loot for a successful completion. Not to mention that loot is tied to weekly Nightfall weapon drops. Tomb of the Elders in Revenant is similar, although to be fair, it has slightly more variance. Forced replayability also isn't a solution, such as being forced to play an exotic mission multiple times without really anything changing. If the available activities don't feel worth playing, of course players will not want to play them or grind them for loot. Within these activities, there is also an issue with challenge, namely with enemy variants and activity modifiers. Bungie attempted to tackle these issues with a new set of challenging modifiers, as well as the brand new Banes type of enemy. Modifiers ended up being a major sticking point with players, as many of the new ones were designed in a way that frustrated them, the counterfeit mod being the most controversial of them. Banes were a way to add variants to non-champion enemies, but in practice, kinda just felt like they didn't add much of anything to the game. In fact, I don't think I really noticed when there was a Bane active. But that's just me. Shifting focus, let's talk about armor mods and build crafting. In Lightfall, Bungie made the decision to simplify the armor mod system to make it more approachable for new players. While they succeeded in their goal, it was at the expense of build variety. At the time, it was a brand new feature, so not many players really noticed. Fast forward to today, and almost every build in the game is almost identical in terms of armor mods. Of course, subclass options and the seasonal artifact mods were different, but the armor mods themselves tended to be mostly the same from build to build. This severely cut back on the decision making and choices that make build crafting so interesting. The most important component of your build is your subclass and your exotic, and it kind of feels like almost nothing else matters. The other major problem with armor is stats. One of my oldest videos that I made over a year ago now was all about how your armor stats don't matter, and it pretty much still remains true. With only a couple stats providing meaningful gameplay effects, getting the perfect armor for a specific build is usually unnecessary. Stats and how you choose to distribute them should be an important component for build crafting and build diversity. As a surprise to no one, player counts are at an all-time low. Believe it or not, player population is a major contributor to a lot of issues with the game. Of course, a low population is a result of issues with the game itself, but it also causes its own set of problems. A couple standout symptoms are long queue times for activities such as PvP, and a lack of LFGs for raids and dungeons. PvP is most vulnerable to low player population. Historically, weekends with a low trials population tended to skew hardcore, making going flawless or enjoying the mode difficult for everyone, both casuals and sweats alike. Games were challenging, cheaters were more common, and it just made it hard to get the loot you were looking for from the activity. This is still happening currently, making it hard for a mostly non-PvP player to find enjoyment in the activity, as well as making high-skill players forced to only play at a high level with no breaks. On the PvE side, low populations means finding a group of players, whether that's friends or LFG, to play a raid or dungeon with, difficult. These activities are not just the backbone, but also the flesh and blood of the endgame in Destiny. If you can't find people to play the content with, there's no reason to log in, even if you really want to play. It is especially challenging for new raiders who are looking for a Sherpa group, since a high proportion of Fireteam Finder and Discord LFG is just looking for fast completions now. In a high population environment, there will be, of course, more players willing to play and or teach just for the sake of it. But PvE not only has problems with finding players because of low population, but PvE is actively contributing to the low player population. Endgame content is simply not worth playing. Raids are the source of the most coveted weapons available in the game, but craftable raid weapons remove a major incentive to play. Raid armor has no functional gameplay differentiator from any other armor, outside of fashion maybe. Dungeons are the best source of high stat armor, but because stats are not that important, neither is the armor. The dungeon weapon pools for the most recent dungeons have also been somewhat lackluster, usually only having a single weapon or two that are worth chasing besides the main exotic. Once you acquire these few weapons, you again have no reason to replay the dungeon, and so you stop playing. Dungeons and raids need to become more replayable in some way to give players a reason to play older ones, or to keep players playing the newer ones. There's other issues, from poor storytelling in episodes, to a horrendous new player experience / onboarding system. Destinations outside of the most recent patrol zone tend to be barren, and much of the new content to be released is a reuse of old content, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but being that it's the primary type of content being released is the issue. I could go on and on. The point is, there's a lot going on in Destiny that is contributing to a severe drop in players, and that is despite the numerous improvements and fantastic content that we've been given over the past year. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I want to tackle as many of these parts of the game as I can with my analysis lens, both the good and the bad. And this is finally where you guys come in. I want to know what you want me to talk about next. Live right now on the community tab of my channel is a poll for what the next video is going to cover. For now, I picked 3 topics that I think would be good to cover, so go vote on your favorite. I'll try to cover everything eventually. Every video I release, I'll release a poll with another 3 topics, so eventually we'll cover everything. If there's something not in the poll, or something I didn't mention that you'd like to see a video about, let me know in the comments down below. I'm also looking to get as much community thoughts as I can, so I can do my best to accurately talk about each aspect of the game, so comment your thoughts away. And also, don't forget to leave a like on the video if you liked it, and subscribe to see the first in-depth State of Destiny video when it drops. I promise I won't make you wait too long. But with all that said, I think that's all I've got for now. As always, I've been Rizeki, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.